Hi everyone, I'm Elaine, and these are ads that I used to see on my walk to campus every day. I'm sure they look familiar to many of you. They're ads for BumbleBiz, the business networking version of the feminist dating app Bumble. They claim to empower women to expand their networks, to advance their careers, and yes, even be swiping away sexism in business. I know, it sounds pretty good, right? It seems like nowadays it's becoming increasingly common to market this idea of social good as if it's a commodity. It's not enough to simply sell goods and services anymore. You need a grand vision to connect the world, to reimagine cities, to create empathy machines. But I want to challenge this ideology. I think most of us would agree that sexism is not something that can simply be swiped away with the right app. Yet, this rhetoric of the techno-fix still prevails. And the idea of solving social problems through engineering is not a new one. I argue that when we talk about technology in this totalizing yet superficial way, we're actually recreating a long Western tradition of an over-reliance on science and technology in order to achieve unhindered progress, and in some cases, even colonial domination. Which brings me to my next point. This is the Radiant City. It was designed by the architect Le Corbusier in 1930. As a high modernist urban designer, Le Corbusier was known for his grandiose utopian visions of the ideal industrial city. He attempted to solve the problem of the old city of the past by prioritizing things like aesthetics, orderliness, simplification, and efficiency. This is Brasilia, developed by 3 followers of Le Corbusier. Similarly, they sought to create a utopian city from a blank slate, steering away from the so-called disorderliness of the chaos and the slums of Brazil. However, in doing so, they created barren, empty spaces. They sacrificed culture, history, and the idiosyncratic needs and desires of its inhabitants, everything that makes a city human and worth living in. I would argue that this is not so different from this, that technocracy, a theory or system of society according to which government is controlled by scientists and engineers, is still very much alive and well. And my concern today is that we are veering too much towards a technocratic way of thinking when we talk about it being able to change the world. It suggests that there's only one truth, one solution to everything, that the problems we as humans face are simply problems that can be engineered away. Sophia Noble is a scholar of sociocultural informatics and the author of Algorithms of Oppression, in which she explores how search engines like Google, rather than being neutral platforms, actually reinforce racist stereotypes about women of color. She argues that we need more people in technology to have backgrounds in the humanities and in the social sciences, and that lacking this rigorous study of people and their communities is what is leading to the kinds of technologies that come at the expense of people of color and women. And as we move into urban reform efforts today, we can see that Noble's argument holds true. Sidewalk Labs is an Alphabet-owned urban technology firm behind all of the Link NYC kiosks that you see on every block in Manhattan. They claim to be improving the future of urban life through digital solutions, tackling problems such as, quote, longer commutes, higher rents, and fewer opportunities within cities. However, they make no concession to the myriad conditions that have led to these issues in the first place, such as climate change, social inequity, displacement, none of which can be solved through sleek techno-fixes. So instead of dropping tech on neighborhoods, what if we grew it with them? What if we had a model of urban technology that strives to grant communities independence to set their own rules away from a corporate globalized network? The Othernet is a project developed by Dhruv Mehrotra based in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. It is a model of the internet in which only members of this particular community can access and upload their own web pages. Under the other net, the small-scale organic community interactions that are missing in the urbanism of sidewalk labs and Le Corbusier can thrive, such as a high school deli worker uploading his own website to advertise his business. Morotra seeks to understand how communities can define tech-driven justice for themselves. As we move beyond the field of urban design, I'd like to talk about virtual reality, which is another technological space nowadays that claims to be changing the world. This is a still from a documentary VR film called Clouds Over Sidra, created by the filmmaker Chris Milk. It centers around the everyday life of a young Syrian refugee. And Milk, in a 2015 TED Talk, advocates for the use of VR as an empathy machine. He says that because of the immersive qualities of the film, that you can feel her humanity and empathize with her on a deeper level. The problem with this empathy machine ideology is that it suggests that we will become more empathetic human beings simply by experiencing it. But this simply isn't true, and it's detrimental to pose this as a genuine possibility. We may feel empathy in the moment, but actually becoming more empathetic human beings is not a simple, straightforward process that occurs over the course of a short 8-minute film. Milk also fails to implicate the greater reasons why the Syrian refugee crisis exists in the first place, and his subject position as a white American cis male in relation to the oppressed groups of people he claims to be saving. So, what does VR that understands ourselves as complicated and nuanced, rather than as problems simply waiting to be solved, actually look like? VR that understands how technology is constructed by and equally constructs political, economic, and social systems. Neurospeculative Afrofeminism is a multimedia experience developed by the design studio Hyphen Labs. It consists of a VR experience that transports the viewer to a black hair salon that acts as a kind of speculative fiction that imagines futurisms in which women of color hold power. Ashley Backus-Clark, who is the black female founder of NSAF, developed it in direct response to the killings of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile in 2016, in order to urge her audience to think critically about the world that we live in. NSAF doesn't claim to solve issues of racism or police brutality, as if those were issues that could be easily solved. Instead, she seeks to make explicit systems of inequality of the lived experience of Black women and to subvert our expectations surrounding what they can be. For my last example, I'd like to return to the field of design, which can be a useful framework to think about tech and engineering in the modern day. Design for the Other 90% was an exhibition held at the UN by the Cooper Hewitt in 2007. It sought to highlight the architects and designers that addressed the basic needs of the other 90% of the world's population not traditionally served by professional designers. However, I'd like to ask, instead of designing for people we don't know in countries that we're alienated from, instead of presuming that we know what is best for them, and instead of posing an other, what if we pushed for a mode of design that heralds autonomy and self-sustaining ways of living? Arturo Escobar is a Colombian-American political anthropologist of political ecology, who in his recent book, Designs for the Pluriverse, has pushed forth the notion of autonomous design, in which it is recognized that as human beings, we design our worlds and our worlds design us. Escobar imbues radical democracy, self-rule, and cultural self-determination within design theory and practice. He recognizes that every community practices the design of itself, that in order to create a more just and decolonized social order, we need to recognize that the designer and the designed for should be the same entity. Escobar asks how we can radically redefine design in order to explicitly position it in relation to politics, community, and living. What the other net, neurospeculative Afrofeminism, and autonomous design all have in common is not their technological advancements or innovations. Instead, they all reflect a critical awareness of the world that we live in. They're examples of technology being used in ways that explicitly positions it in relation to communities, to ways of living, to politics, to economics, to the environment. And so I ask you, the next time you encounter a grand statement about tech being able to save the world, to ask for who it is being saved, who is being left out of this narrative, and if it will change the way we think, not as consumers or as abstract entities, but as human beings. Thank you.